Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm posting a new type of video and I'm super excited to share with you guys. If you couldn't tell by the title, it's going to be a watchmaking and watch repair video. Hopefully this will be the first of many videos that I produce on hobby level watchmaking and watch repair. This was my first time really trying out macro photography and videography, so I'm still getting used to this type of filming. I recently bought a bunch of new watchmaking tools, and I'm really excited to actually put them to use. Before I was using a very cheap kit, and I wasn't really able to get too far without risking damaging watches just because the quality of the tools were not great. But now I have the iconic green watchmaker's desk mat, which I'm super excited about. It makes my whole setup look so much more professional, and a bunch of other equipment that just makes taking apart watches that much easier. With this series, I'm hoping to give a beginner's or hobbyist perspective on watchmaking, and I'm hoping to sort of show you guys what's really possible with a basic set of tools and a hobby level understanding of watch movements. And I really hope that this video series will sort of inspire people to get into learning about watches and spark some curiosity out there. And if I manage to inspire just one of you, then I feel like this video series will have been a success. And I'm super excited to be sharing this journey with you guys. If you enjoy this video and want to see more like it, please consider supporting me by subscribing to my channel. Without further ado, let's get started. I bought these vintage watch movements off of eBay for around $30, and most of them are not working, with the exception of this one tiny women's watch movement made by Bedford. Obviously a rectangular movement, but you can see as I hold it in my hands it's extremely tiny. I've only successfully disassembled and reassembled the Siegel ST36 movement, which is just an ETA 6497 clone. Now, because this is only a manual wind movement, I don't expect to have many problems figuring out how to take this one apart and put it back together. However, I think its size is the one thing that will be a challenge for me, but I'm really excited to put my skills to the test. Now, here's just a brief video of me showing that sometimes the movement stops randomly in certain positions and just getting it started back up with a simple dust blower. Now, I tried to use a set of hand pullers for the hands, but they were actually so tiny that the blades couldn't actually grab the hands. So I'm just using the two smallest screwdrivers in my set to sort of pry them off. And here they are. They're absolutely tiny. Now here I am unwinding the mainspring. I lose my grip on the crown and accidentally let it all out at once, which can't be too great for the movement, but I don't think I damaged any parts. But definitely for next time I'll try to be a little more careful with it. Here I am pulling out the balance cock. Now you can also see on the movement there's quite a bit of finishing and decoration on the different parts, like on the train bridge. There's something that looks like Geneva stripes, and I see that only because I'm not too sure if these are actually Geneva stripes or if they're just a different finishing technique, but regardless, the finishing on this movement is exquisite. Now I lost the footage of me unscrewing the pallet fork bridge, but here I am pulling both of those out, and I'm trying to be extremely careful with the pallet fork. Something interesting happens here actually, and as I pull out the pallet fork you can kind of see the escape wheel at the bottom there sort of turning very slowly. That means I probably didn't unwind the mainspring fully, but because it's moving so slow, either means that the tension in the mainspring is just extremely low, or it just means that some of the pivots are dirty and gunked up and prevent the escape wheel from spinning at light speed. But you can see from this video that even as I'm releasing the click from the ratchet wheel, there seems to be no built up. It seems to be that the mainspring is fully unwound. Here I am unscrewing the intermediate ratchet wheel, and this is a reverse threaded screw, so it feels like I'm tightening it, but really I'm loosening it. By the way, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider giving it a like, commenting, and subscribing so that my videos can reach a larger audience. It helps more than you can imagine. Thanks. Now here I am unscrewing the screw that holds in the click, and I'm actually using a slightly smaller screwdriver than what I should be, and I end up chipping the blade a little bit and damaging it. So I'm going to have to resharpen that. But now I'm using a slightly bigger screwdriver and it seems to do the job just fine. Now here I'm sort of unseating the click spring, and I'm using a piece of Rodico to kind of hold it in place in case it flies out. And in the past I've ruined several movements by just being careless, by just letting the spring fly off, never to be seen again. So this is what my current setup looks like. You can see I've got this camera sort of cantilevered on this tripod, held up, supported by this 12-pound weight. The camera actually has to be this close to what it's shooting because I am using like a macro lens, and the focal distances are extremely short on it, so basically it has to be right in front of the lens. And it's just a little annoying when you need to unscrew stuff on the movement. So if anyone has any suggestions for what sort of setups I should use, any tips would be greatly appreciated. Here I am just unscrewing the barrel bridge screws. Now here I'm just inspecting the pivots of the train wheels with my 10x loop because I was afraid that in pulling off the train bridge I may have damaged one of them, but they all look fine. Now if you've done any sort of watch repair or just taken apart a watch, you may have noticed that I forgot to do something major. Right here, as I'm trying to pull on the center wheel, I realized that I completely forgot to take the cannon pinion off the dial side, and the dial itself as well. At this point, I have no clue how to get the dial off the movement, but I later discovered that there are these tiny set screws in the side of the movement that are sort of clamping down on the feet of the dial. I finally find the set screw that's holding the dial feed in place and unscrew it, and the dial successfully comes off. Looking at the front side of the movement here, you can actually see that there's some perlage or circular graining, which is another form of decorative finishing. And looking at the back side of the dial, I see these sort of scratches, which I can only assume are service marks left by the watchmakers who serviced this watch in years gone by. And at this point, I realized that this watch has a history. It was owned and obviously cared for because the owner got it serviced. And even after all these years, it's still in decent condition. And it's really cool because I feel like I'm becoming a part of history by adding my name to the list of watchmakers who may have serviced this watch. So here I am taking off the dial washer, the hour wheel, and the minute wheel, and I'm trying to use my tool of choice for removing cannon pinions, which is just my hand remover. But again, the cannon pinion is actually too small, and I end up using some pliers to just gently remove the cannon pinion. Now I know that this is a really bad way to remove a cannon pinion, especially because it risks bending the center wheel stem. You can see that the center wheel fell out off the back of the watch. I was afraid that I may have bent the stem, but just by visual inspection it looks like it's fine. Now it's time to remove all the keyless works. You can see here I'm again using a piece of Rodico to pull out the intermediate setting wheel, but also using it to keep the yoke spring in place to prevent it from flying out of the movement. So now flipping the movement over to the other side and unscrewing the setting lever screw, and that comes out nicely, and it causes the setting lever to fall out from the front side of the watch. Now for removing the escape wheel cock, and you can see I'm just being very careful because it's just, again, so tiny. And you can see the detailing on this part is just so incredible. You can see the pseudo Geneva stripes and the chamfering on the outside edges. Now I love hand-finished watch movements, but this is actually my first time working on a movement that is hand-finished to an extent. And working on this movement just feels different. It feels like this movement has a soul compared to the cold, mass-produced Etta clone that I had previously practiced on. And here I am removing the lower pivot for the balance wheel. And you can see up close that this is not an anti-shock assembly, which leads me to believe that this watch might be from before the 1950s, when the anti-shock jewel housing actually became widespread. Okay, you can barely tell what this is that I'm holding in my tweezers right now, but this is actually the a very, very tiny setting screw that holds the dial in place. It screws into the side of the main plate. You can kind of see there's the hole. There's the hole in which this setting screw goes into. And basically this clamps down onto one of the dial feet. There are actually two spots in the main plate for setting screws like this, although there's only one of these in one of the holes. So my theory is that one of the previous watchmakers who serviced this watch may have lost it, and I would understand why. So I'll try not to lose this because this is the only thing that's holding the dial in place now. So this is what all the parts look like, all disassembled, and I think I'm gonna stop right here for now. In the next video I'm gonna try to clean all these parts, so stay tuned for that. Again, for scale, these are my fingers, and this is the main plate in my hands. How someone managed to make all of these components at such a small scale is completely beyond me, especially because this is a much older movement. There's still obviously a lot of care that's gone into making this movement, especially with all the decorations on the components, like the Geneva stripes on some of the bridges, etc. So I'm excited to see how this cleans up. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, commenting, and subscribing for the YouTube algorithm so that my content can reach more people. It helps more than you can imagine. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.